This lesson is all about converting between percents and fractions, lesson 2.2. You need your math notebook and that foldable that we've been working on for converting between fractions, percents, and decimals. So here we go. First, I want to go over what the definition or idea of a percent is. If you look at the word percent, the word cent, C-E-N-T, is at the end. And there are 100 pennies in $1. So the idea of 100 is very important when you are thinking about what a percent is. A percent means a number or an amount out of 100, or what part of comparing the part to 100 are you talking about. So it really is a ratio, a comparison. You're comparing something and relating it to 100, to the number 100. So here's an example. This is straight out of your workbook. 45% is 45 out of 100. So say you had a question, say you had a test that had 100 questions and you got 45 of them correct. You would have 45 right out of the total 100. You can also represent it with different models. We're going to do some of these in class. This is a standard 10 by 10 grid, and literally 45 boxes are shaded in to represent 45%. And this is another way of showing the same thing, except for it's just a horizontal box, that rectangle that's going across, and it's divided up into 10 sections instead of 100. So each rectangle, each small rectangle is 10, and so you can see that 4 and 45 is halfway in between the fifth box. So this would be considered 45%. So that's the idea of what a percent is. Before we get talking about how to convert them, I want you to know what the actual idea of percent is. So we are going to be opening up that first fraction door, and instead of the first little door, we're actually going to be opening up the one that says percent, because the first thing that we're going to talk about is how to change a fraction into a percent. So open up your foldable so it looks like this, and we'll jot down some notes in the center first. So here it is zoomed up to the center. When you have a fraction and you're asked to answer the question, what is this fraction as a percent, you first need to convert it to a decimal. So it's exactly what we did yesterday. So number one, we're going to convert the fraction to a decimal. And how do you do that? Well, we're going to write C above. Under this door, right above it, we went through the directions on how to convert a fraction to a decimal. So that's the first step. The next thing you'll have to do, once you have that decimal, number 2, is we are going to multiply by 100. Remember, percent is dealing with that idea of 100. So to convert a decimal to a percent, we are going to multiply the decimal by 100. However, we don't have to do the traditional methods, because we know when we multiply by a power of 10, the decimal point is the only thing that moves. So I'm going to tack on this direction that really you're just going to move the decimal point to, notice that's important, 2 places to the right. Make sure you have the word right. So now I've moved over to that far right hand, the back of the door, really, the small door. And we're going to do a couple of examples on there, just like yesterday. The first example is 3/25. first thing we have to do is try to get this to a decimal by making the denominator a 10, 100, or 1,000. I'm going to pick 100 because I know 25 times 4 is 100. And now what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. This is a form of 1. So now we have 12 hundredths. When I say that fraction, I'm actually saying the place value place. So that's telling me that the 12 is going to be sitting in the tenth and hundredths place. So here we have a decimal. And now our last step is to take this decimal right here and move it 2 places to the right. So it's not in between the 0 and 1 anymore. Now it's going to be sitting to the right of the 2. And that will be our percent. And if you have a good number sense, you probably could have done some of this in your head. I really want you to write down these steps so that I know that you are converting from a fraction to a percent at the beginning. The final example we're going to do for this one is going to be 1/10. It's already having a 10 in the denominator, so we can go right to the step of writing this as a decimal. And I chose this one on purpose because sometimes you're going to have a decimal that only has one number to the right of it. You still have to move the decimal point 2 places to the right, which will mean that you'll have to annex a 0. So this one kind of goes away. Notice this one kind of went away as well. And now we're left with just 10%. So the decimal point moved. It's not in between the first 0 and 1. Now it's over towards the right, and you have to annex that 0. Now you can close up that section of your foldable, and now we're going to open up the bottom door, the bottom big door. So we're going to take notes now on how to change a percent to, and then we're going to open up the fraction door. So percent to fraction now. You notice this will be what you'll see, and we're going to be right in the center, jotting down some notes first. So when you're giving a percent and asked to find what fraction is that, we are going to literally just put the number of whatever the percent is over 100. So the denominator will be 100, and whatever the percent digits were, like 12%, that would be the numerator, 12. We'll do an example in a second. The other thing that we have to do at the end, once we have the fraction, is make sure that it's in simplest form. So you might have to simplify, not all the time, but that is what I want you to get in the habit of doing when you can. So let's do a couple of examples. So here we have the back of the fraction door. We're going to have 12%, like I said before. And literally, these digits, the 1 and the 2, will be in the numerator, and then 100 is in the denominator. And now we need to figure out, is this in simplest form? I know they're both even, so I know I can divide by 2 over 2. I also, though, am seeing that I have another factor that would work, 4, because I know 4 works with 100. So if I divide by 4 over 4, I will get 3 over 25. We're going to do some more examples, but they're going to be at a later lesson when we're dealing with different kinds of percents. But this is one example for now. Well, we're going to do a couple in just a moment. So these are 2 examples for you to do on that other page right next door, converting from fraction to percent, and then I have 2 more that go the opposite way, percents to fractions. So go ahead and try these. So we want to get this fraction into something that works well with 10, 100, or 1,000. So I'm going to rewrite this so that the denominator is actually on the bottom. I could divide by 5, or I could multiply by 2. I could go down to 10 or up to 100. It does not matter. I'm going to divide by 5 because then I'm working with a simpler fraction. And so now I have 10 on the bottom and 3 on the top in the numerator. This fraction, 3/10, is the decimal 0.3. Now I'm going to take this decimal and move it 2 places to the right. This 0 goes away, but I have to annex a 0 here, which equals 30%. First one done. This one, 12/20, I'm going to multiply this by 5 over 5 so that I get 100, and then 12 times 5 is going to be 60. So 60 over 100, 60 hundredths is 0.60. And I'm going to move the decimal point over 2 places, so it's not going to be here. I don't need to worry about this 0. And because I have 60, I already have the 60%. I don't have to annex this time. If I had divided down to get a 10, I would have had to annex the 0. So that's the 2 examples, fractions to percent. Now let's go the other way. Here we have 52%. I'm going to literally put the 5 and the 2 in the numerator, and because it's a percent, it's out of 100. That's what the idea of percent means. Meaning if there was a 100-question test and you got 52 questions right, your grade would be a 52 out of 100. Now we have to figure out if this is in simplest form. It's not, so I'm going to divide by 2 over 2. When I do that, 52 divided by 2 is actually going to be 26. If you did not know that off the top of your head, you can just come over here and scratch it out. 2 times 2 is 4, and then you bring down the 2, and that would be 12. So that's the numerator, and then 100 divided by 2 is 50. So there we have that percent in a fraction form. 75% is our last example together. And we have 75 in the numerator, 100 in the denominator. That is actually going to be simplified down. If we divide it by 25 over 25, that actually is going to be the fraction 3/4. 3 times 25 is 75, 4 times 25 is 100, or if you're dividing, going the other way. So these are the 2 examples that I hope you tried on your own first, and then checked to make sure you were right. I'll see you tomorrow where we will be converting between fractions and percents all day long. Bye-bye.